Springlock suits, one of my favorite Fnaf inventions for storytelling purposes, and they're iconic in this franchise. A storytelling device that not only showcases the unethical horror of the company, the danger of the animatronics, but also ends up being the fatal flaw of the man behind the slaughter. Chef's kiss. And the two Springlock suits are debatably the most memorable and talked about characters in the franchise, the mysterious Golden Freddy and the Yellow Rabbit who never truly seems to die. But although these are the two Springlock suits we all remember, we know there's a few more Springlock suits in circulation in their heyday. But how many? And what became of them? And just how many safe rooms got boarded up? And how many of them had a suit inside? Well, I'm Building Inspector Candi Bunny, and we're gonna find all the safe rooms and find one.
A real one.
The first Springlock suit we meet in the game is Golden Freddy in Fnaf 1, but at that time neither Scott nor the audience know much about the Yellow Bear. It isn't until Fnaf 3 when we meet Golden Freddy's co-star that we learn more about Springlock suits. We knew from the Fnaf 1 newspapers that the original June of 1985 murders, the Missing Children's Incident or MCI, were committed by someone who dressed in a company mascot to gain the children's trust. We know from Fnaf 2 that this murderer is the purple guy who is working the same week as you in the Fnaf 2 location as the daytime security guard. The minigames tell us that he killed the 5 MCI children, and from the phone guy calls on night 6, it seems that he's used that same MO again.
Okay, before I go, I wanted to ease your mind about any rumors you might have heard lately. I can personally assure you that whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment. It's just all rumor and speculation. There's been somewhat of an investigation going on. We may end up having to close for a few days. I don't know. I want to emphasize, though, that it's really just a precaution. Fazbear Entertainment denies any wrongdoing. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
The Save Them minigame depicts bloody puddles and bodies around the Fnaf 2 location. Purple Guy has struck again, but we're not getting into who and how many died here and if they possessed anyone. But we can easily put together that the Fnaf 1 and Fnaf 2 murders are done by the same man, and that he committed his crimes in an old yellow company suit. Enter Fnaf 3. Our original information on Springlocks came in 3 forms in this game. First, we hear a lot of information from Phone Guy's old training tapes and memos. Second, we see a true springlocking in the Between Night minigames. And finally, we can evaluate the designs of Springtrap and Golden Freddy in light of the fact that they're Springlocks. Phone Guy's training tapes give us the most information on Springlocks anywhere in the franchise, and they're preceded by Phone Dude's calls. Now, seasoned lore experts like the majority of my viewers could probably recite these calls by heart, but we're still gonna go through them to gather all the evidence.
All of them, together in one place.
In order to remember why we believe the things we do about Springlocks. We can pass over the first Phone Dude phone call and summarize since it's less relevant. Phone Dude's call reveals that the Fnaf 3 location is not a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza like the first 2 games were, but instead a horror attraction based on the old rumors about Freddy's, which has been closed for years. People think this game takes place anytime between 2015 to 2028, but the actual date is less important than the fact that the old Freddy's locations have been closed for decades. Phone Dude says he's out trying to track down a lead for new vintage artifacts to put in the horror attraction. Specifically, they haven't found any intact animatronics yet. Enter night 2.
Hey man, okay, I have some awesome news for you. First of all, we found some vintage audio training cassettes. Dude, these are like prehistoric. I think they were like training tapes for like other employees or something like that. So I thought we could like have them playing like over the speakers as people walk through the attraction. Dude, that makes this feel legit, man. But I have an even better surprise for you. You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one. Gotta go, man. Well, look, it's in there somewhere. I'm sure you'll see it. Okay, I'll leave you with some of this great audio that I found. Talk to you later, man.
These vintage audio training cassettes, which we're about to hear, were found at the same location as the real animatronic that Phone Dude has found. The animatronic, of course, is the Springlock bunny suit, Spring Bonnie, William Afton not sold separately.
Hello? Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. These tapes will provide you with much-needed information on how to handle/climb into/climb out of mascot costumes. Right now, we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit.
so please pay close attention while learning how to operate these suits, as accidents, /injuries, /death, /irreparable and grotesque maiming can occur. First, we will discuss how to operate the mascots when they are in animatronic form. For ease of operation, the animatronics are set to turn and walk towards sound cues. This is an easy and hands-free approach to making sure the animatronics stay where the children are for maximum entertainment /crowd-pleasing value. To change the animatronics to suit mode, insert and turn firmly the hand crank provided by the manufacturer. Turning the crank will recoil and compress the animatronic parts around the sides of the suit, providing room to climb inside. Please make sure the spring locks are fastened tight to ensure the animatronic devices remain fixed. We will cover this in more detail in tomorrow's session. Remember to smile. You are the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Up until this phone call, we had animatronic characters and then we had mascot costumes. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy are all animatronic performers, and we hadn't seen a costume suit, but we learned that there were some old ones in the back in Fnaf 2. This phone call reveals that in the Fnaf universe, there's an invention called a Springlock suit that can be used as either an animatronic or a costume. The animatronic parts can be manually recoiled to allow room for someone to wear the Springlock as a costume and walk around the restaurant. And when they're done, the animatronic parts can snap back into position so the character can perform on stage. This first training tape, Phone Guy says irreparable and grotesque maiming can occur, which makes sense. If you don't secure those animatronic parts correctly and they snapped back into place at the wrong time, you'd be in a pretty rough spot. If we left off here, we could probably understand how Fazbear got away with using these suits for as long as they did. They're definitely dangerous, but only with user error. If you properly crank and fasten the spring locks, the device is safe. But then we hear training tape 2.
Hello. For today's lesson, we will be continuing our training on proper suit handling techniques. When using an animatronic as a suit, please ensure that the animatronic parts are tightly compressed and fastened by the spring locks located around the inside of the suit. It may take a few moments to position your head and torso between these parts in a manner where you can move and speak. Try not to nudge or press against any of the spring locks inside the suit. Do not touch the spring locks at any time. Do not breathe on the spring locks, as moisture may loosen them and cause them to break loose. In the case that the spring locks come loose while you are wearing a suit, please try to maneuver away from populated areas before bleeding out, as to not ruin the customer experience.
Alright, so user error does still set off the spring locks. It's just that the definition of user error has turned from not cranking and securing the parts properly to crying, sweating, and breathing. Did any of you guys ever read The Librarian from the Black Lagoon as kids? This book scared the ever live, laugh, loving daylights out of me as a preschooler, and hearing this training tape for the first time brought back memories of my 5-year-old self staring in horror at this page, thinking that the book was gonna end with everyone dying of suffocation in the evil library, and snapping the book shut and never reading it again. I'm proud to say that I finally overcame my fear and finished the book, and spoiler alert, they do not all die of suffocation in the library.
As always, if there is ever an emergency, please go to the designated safe room. Every location is built with one extra room that is not included in the digital map layouts programmed into the animatronics or security system. This room is hidden to customers, invisible to animatronics, and is always off camera.
How nice! Fazbear has a tornado shelter room for its employees that animatronics can't even go in. It's so kind and out of character for them to put employee safety above the preservation of their expensive animatronics. I mean, if I was drowning in my own blood and having my bones replaced by mechanical parts, I would feel so valued as an employee because my company provided me with a quiet, peaceful place to die. Night 4, we hear from Phone Guy again, but we're no longer listening to old training tapes. Instead, we're hearing a memo about an update in policy.
Hello. There's been a slight change of company policy concerning use of the suit. Don't. After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures, the company has deemed the suit temporarily unfit for employees. Safety is top priority at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which is why the classic suits are being retired to an appropriate location while being looked at by our technicians. I repeat, the classic suits are not to be touched, activated, or worn.
This is starting to track with what we know about the murderer from Fnaf 2. There was an old yellow suit in the back used by the murderer, and now these suits that used to be main animatronic performers have been demoted after an accident to unused costumes in the back.
Hello. This is just a reminder of company policy concerning the safe room. The safe room is reserved for equipment and or other property not being currently used and as a backup safety location for employees only. This is not a break room and should not be considered a place for employees to hide and or congregate. and under no circumstance should a customer ever be taken into this room and out of the main show area. Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved and would like to remind employees that this costume is not safe to wear under any circumstances. Thank you, and remember to smile. You are the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Someone has used the Spring Bonnie suit in a way it wasn't meant to be used, and someone has used the safe rooms in a way they weren't meant to be used. It seems that the missing children's incident of 1985 or the unclear murder incident of 1987 have just taken place. Most likely the MCI, because while we know there was a suit used in both incidents, 2 kids were lured to the back rooms in the MCI, and we don't know if this was the case in the 1987 incident.
Hello. This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one. Work crews will be here most of the day today, constructing a false wall over the old door face. Nothing is being taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives. Thanks again, and remember to smile. You are the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
The Springlock suits had been retired because at some point they were too much of a liability, but at a certain point they were entombed. Given that these training tapes were found at the same time as the Spring Bonnie suit, which was behind the wall, and it seems like the purpose of sealing the rooms was to hide all evidence of the old suits, it seems like these tapes were hidden behind the wall as well. Now the minigame that takes place before this phone call is the Springlocking of Afton, and Into the Pit gave us audio for the Springlocking as well. Not only was the suit used for the murder sealed away, but the murderer himself was trapped behind the wall. Until now. Between the phone calls, the Springlocking of Afton, the Spring Bonnie suit, and the Secret Stage 01 minigame depicting Spring Bonnie with a yellow bear, we can infer that the second Springlock suit phone guy references is Golden Freddy. But if we have doubts, Fnaf 4 helps us to feel a lot more confident. The yellow bear and the yellow rabbit were the 2 original Springlock suits that have been around since the days of Fazbear's predecessor, Fredbear's Family Diner, and their original names were Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. These are the big 2 Springlocks, and we know quite a good deal about the history of the Spring Bonnie suit, but the Fredbear Springlock is much less known to us. The Fredbear character was the face of Fredbear's Family Diner, surpassing Spring Bonnie in popularity no contest. In 1983, the Fredbear Springlock suit was involved in an accident called the Big Bite that ultimately killed one of the owner's sons. The color of the hat and bow tie of the Fredbear character changed from a purple to a dark brownish black, and later the suit is retired along with Spring Bonnie because it's finally revealed how unsafe Springlocks are. But who is possessing Golden Freddy has remained a hot topic for ages. The top contenders are the Crying Child, the Vengeful Spirit Cassidy, and the Vengeful Spirit Andrew. In most interpretations, after the Springlock suits are retired, but before they're boarded up, at least one child was put into the Golden Freddy suit and springlocked, and the pain and horror of their death made them more vengeful than the other spirits. The Golden Freddy suit may have been sealed in the back room, but it teleports, so it's not super relevant. The timeline of the suit is up for a lot of debate, between whose body is in it, whose spirit is controlling it, and when they died. There's a lot of questions. The Fredbear and Spring Bonnie Springlock suits also seem to be cut from the same cloth narratively, but their mechanics couldn't be more different. Springtrap is fully in animatronic mode, forced to follow sound cues and walking around. Golden Freddy is entirely slumped, like they're in suit mode instead of animatronic mode. But if the body in that suit was spring-locked, why is Golden Freddy not walking around following cues like Springtrap? Perhaps they are in animatronic mode but are broken down? Or perhaps Afton removed the bodies of the victims at some point to keep from being caught and had to put the Springlocks into suit mode to get the body out. But that's all speculation. One more piece of history about Springlocks before we getting into answering the question this whole video is supposed to be about: their invention and manufacturing. The Silver Eyes novel trilogy says Henry invented the Springlock suits. This is corroborated by Henry's speech in Pizzeria Simulator.
Small souls trapped in prisons of my making.
It seems as if Henry is the primary inventor and roboticist of all the Fazbear animatronics, Springlocks and other. However, Sister Location makes this a little unclear. Afton has created a sister company called Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. All the Funtime animatronic blueprints are from Afton Robotics LLC, and the Funtimes are extremely advanced for their time, far more advanced than the classic animatronics, if the commenters on this poll have anything to say about it. So is Afton also a robotics genius? We find out there's another Springlock suit at that location. Did he invent that one and Henry invented the rest? Did he even invent the Funtimes, or did he steal them from Henry like he did with Baby in the fourth closet? Unclear. But right now, I'm going with Henry invented the Springlocks and the originals. Afton invented the Fun Times, with the possible exception of Baby. And Afton made a Springlock suit for circus babies, but he didn't invent the design. And it's just sort of a narrative discontinuity that Afton seems to be jealous of what a good roboticist Henry is. And sometime in the future, we're definitely gonna need to unpack how Henry could make a suit so dangerous for himself and others to wear, despite being apparently one of the heroes of the franchise. But that's for another day. Now we're feeling pretty confident on the origins of Springlocks, their history in the company, and the big two that the story revolve around. We know that there's more than just these two. There's the Springlock incident at the sister location, at the same time Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are at this location. Did they have their own Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, or did they have different characters? How many locations were there? Did they all have Springlocks? Let's go over what we know and then expand to what we can guess with confidence, and then probably enter into wild speculation because golly gee, it's a lot of fun. Now we see one other Springlock, and we hear of one other Springlock, and both of them have to do with the phrase sister location.
After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures,
The sister location, huh? Sounds like it's time for Business Professor Bunny to give us a rundown on terminology. Welcome to Business 103, class. Today we'll be discussing some terminology about related companies and locations. This is a company. It has several store locations. The store locations would refer to each other as sister locations. The company may either create a new company under itself to serve some special purpose, or else acquire an already existing smaller company. In both cases, a company that is a separate legal entity, but still answering to and owned by another company is called the child company, and the company that owns them is called the parent company. If the parent company owns two child companies, those child companies would be sister companies. In the specific case of the game Sister Location from the hit franchise Five Nights at Freddy's, neither of these two scenarios seem to be taking place. Fazbear Entertainment Incorporated is the company that owns many Freddy Fazbear's pizza places. It is also the parent company to Afton Robotics LLC, which opened Circus Baby's Pizza World. As you can see, Circus Baby's Pizza World is neither a sister company nor a sister location to a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. If the business world kept up the analogy of the family tree, they're more like aunt and uncle. Most people would say, one of our parent company's locations or one of our child company's locations. Or slightly less clear but more concise, Circus Baby's Pizza World could be called an affiliate or subsidiary location. Thank you, Professor Bunny. So while Phone Guy says that the springlocking happened at a sister location, I think we should throw out the normal business meaning of the term sister location, because when Scott uses the term in a subsequent game, he's stretching the definition in order to make the title a double entendre. There is room for doubt about whether or not the sister location referenced in the phone call is the same as Circus Baby's Pizza World from the game sister location, specifically because Circus Baby's was only open for a single day, and the major tragedy that happened there was Elizabeth Afton being killed by Baby, who's not a Springlock. What I find most likely is that the Springlock incident that caused the Springlocks to be retired does happen at Circus Baby's, but before it opens, like while an employee was being trained on how to use them.
You're inside something that came from my old pizzeria. I don't think it was ever used. At least not the way it was meant to be used. Too dangerous.
Could be telling us that the suit was used once before the location debuted, but a Springlock failure happened, and it was retired before the location opened. If you're interested about this topic, here's another plug for Unwithered Truth. They make a case for the Springlock suit we see in Sister Location, and the one we hear about in Fnaf 3 being the same suit. I swear, the way I reference Gibby and Unwithered Truth in my recent theories, you'd think they're the only two YouTubers I watch, but I promise they're not. I also watch Astral Spiff. There are a few other popular theories out there. One theory is that this Springlock suit is actually the Fredbear suit post-retirement. Instead of being tossed in the safe room with its spring body counterpart, it is instead shipped off to the child company for storage and to keep it from being found by the dreaded insurance representatives. When Baby says it was never used, it tracks because she never saw the suit used the whole time it was at her pizzeria, even though it was of course used for many years before then. Another theory is that the Springlock failure is actually the bite of 83 at Fredbear's Family Diner. This to me is impossible. A Springlock failure can only occur when the Springlock is in suit mode, but something causes the animatronics to snap into place. The bite of 83 occurs while the Fredbear suit is already in animatronic mode. The final theory is that this is a fourth Springlock suit besides the one that failed. This suit was designed for Circus Babies, but it was never used because at a third location, a Springlock failure happened. What's particularly interesting about Phone Guy's line in Fnaf 3 is that he refers to this as the sister location, not a sister location. So then there's only one sister location to the Freddy's Phone Guy is recording from? But just a few recordings later, Phone Guy says that the safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, which means there are at least 3, but probably more. I think 2 things could be happening here. Number 1, we should take both these lines literally. There's only one other location open at the time of the Springlock failure, but Freddy's has become so popular that they open many locations between the Springlock failure and the boarding up of the safe rooms. Number 2, there have always been more than just 2 restaurants, but either it's an error to call the Springlock failure location the sister location, or else that location for some reason is just called the sister location, despite there technically being several. Perhaps they say, oh yeah, we've got the Hurricane location, the Cedar City location, the Nevada location, and the sister location. I find the second to be much more likely. Freddy's is often referred to as being a great success before the horrible tragedies. Its memory lives on for a long time despite there only being a few years of Freddy's restaurants before tragedy strikes. It makes sense for there to be multiple locations in the heyday. But as you can tell, how many Springlock suits there are is pretty subject to how you interpret Phone Guy's lines about other locations and Baby's lines about the Springlock suit you're in. Let's take a look at Fnaf 4 now. In the Between Night minigames, we see the Fredbear and Spring Bonnie animatronics in operation on stage. I've already mentioned that the Fredbear character went through a slight visual change, going from purple to dark brown accessories, but the Spring Bonnie on stage is very different from the yellow rabbit we know. Yet we know there is a yellower bunny Springlock suit because we see Afton putting someone into one. I have disregarded the different designs of the Spring Bonnie on stage and the one the actor is in as maybe being a difference in lighting, like maybe Fredbear is in the spotlight here and Spring Bonnie isn't, but I'd love to hear from you in the comments why you think there's a brown Bonnie on stage. Either way, we see that there are a few Springlock suits at Fredbear's. There's a Bonnie and Fredbear on stage while another Bonnie and Fredbear are being suited up and walking around in another room. There's also another suit in the back room, but since this is on a different day than we see the other suits, it's very possible it's just one of the 4 suits we already know about. Let's wrap up what all this means in terms of hard evidence before we go on to the fun speculation and the whole reason why I wanted to make this video. I think we have evidence for there being 5 distinct suits: the brown Bunny and Fredbear on stage, the Bonnie and Fredbear that are walking around, and the Funtime Springlock suit with faceplates that open up. If there are 5 and no more, then the narrative goes like this. Springlocks were first used at Fredbear's Family Diner, where there were 2 Fredbear suits and 2 Spring Bonnie suits. When Fredbear's closed, 1 Fredbear and the yellow Spring Bonnie were sent to the first and most popular Freddy's location, and the other 2 were sent off to other locations. When Afton created at Afton Robotics, he designed another Springlock suit for the new cast of characters with faceplates that open like a fun time. What's more likely, given Phone Guy's message, is that there were a few more locations and a few more Springlock suits in use. Likely, Fazbear acquired the rights to manufacture the design from Henry and used them at most locations. When Fazbear decided to board up the safe rooms at most locations, they were specifically boarding up the old Springlock suits at every location that had one. The few locations that didn't got to keep their safe rooms. Alright, let's go! Time to go wild with the theories. In the Silver Eyes, there's actually another Springlock suit that looks totally different from the ones we know. Carlton gets captured by Afton and put into a blue Springlock suit. Afton says that it's one of the first ones Henry ever made. This statement does not come up in the games. The Silver Eyes are a different continuity from the games, so it's not fair to jump straight to saying that Henry made a ton of different suits before finally landing on the Fredbear and Spring Bonnie designs, but it is on the table. It also lines up with how inventions work. You make something, it has flaws, you improve it. And if we are to believe that Henry isn't a monster or as manic as his business partner, it's likely he realized how unstable the Springlocks were and tried several iterations to improve their safety. If this is the case in the games, it is likely there are other Springlock suits that are quite old and haven't been in use since the earliest days of Fredbear's or earlier. But that's not what I'm dying to tell you about. I'm dying to pose the question of why there is a blue Springlock suit when we've only ever seen a yellow one. At first, I was like, maybe Bonnie's design went from blue to yellow and then back to blue to distinguish him from Freddy. But no, look at this shot. That's the head of a blue bear. Now, this is the graphic novel, but in the chaptered version, instead of grabbing the matching blue head to Carlton's suit, Afton actually grabs another green torso piece. So some of the very earliest characters were a blue bear and a green something. And if you see where I'm going, then you're a very smart cadet. Behold the Mediocre Melodies, the tertiary band of Pizzeria Simulator. The Mediocre Melodies are purchased from Stan's Budget Tech catalog, although Orville is purchased from the Rare Finds auction catalog. We noticed as a community how similar the Mediocres were to the random masks seen in the Happiest Day minigame from Fnaf 3. The colors and shapes of the masks line up remarkably well. Happy Frog frankly looks more like an alligator in Happiest Day, but she's still quite close, all except for the blue bear, which by process of elimination should be Nedd Bear, but Nedd Bear is brown, just like Freddy. So it seemed like at one point the design of Nedd Bear was changed, or maybe he was an entirely different blue bear character at some point. So it seems like the Mediocres are either obscure or completely out of rotation characters owned by Fazbear. But they've been around for quite a long time, because those characters are there for the Happiest Day of the Crying Child, who died all the way back in 1983. And would you look at that, two pieces that fit together perfectly, the Happiest Day animal masks and the mediocres, except for one glaring hole, a blue bear character. And here I have a blue bear character. Not only that, but one that must be from the very early days of Springlocks, just like the mediocres must be from before 1983, and a blue bear that goes along with a green character, which would be Happy Frog. Which means that this idea of Henry having several older models before he landed on the designs of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie did happen in the game, because his older designs were some of the mediocres, the blue bear and the green alligator, who were part of the original Mediocre Melodies band. But when the Springlock suits were retired and Fazbear went through company-wide rebranding so people would forget the Springlock accidents, the blue bear got changed to the brown Nedd bear, and the green alligator got changed into the peppy Happy Frog. This also to me makes sense why the crying child would see the mediocres at their happiest day. Happiest Day is a redo of his horrible birthday where everything went wrong, only here everything goes right. But at his old birthday, there weren't other kids wearing these masks. But if Happiest Day is in his memories, it would make sense that a memory of a happier time would come in the form of remembering when he was even younger and the restaurant still had the old characters, back before Mike's bullying got so bad, and back before he became afraid of the animatronics. So if this scene wasn't already sad and emotional enough, we can add in the layer that in order to give the crying child back his happiest day, we must travel back in time to when he wasn't afraid of the restaurant, back when the band was the Mediocre Melodies. That's all for this one, cadets. I tried to keep it shorter this time around because I let my last video get a little long and I need to make sure I have some free time in my week to not burn out. As always, I am an avid reader of my comments, so let me know your thoughts. Also, I am absolutely addicted to making polls on my community tab about what animatronics would win in a fight because the comments are just so freaking funny. The Glamrocks were sweeping this one, but then the Fun Times made a serious comeback once we hit like 2K votes. Also looks like we think DJ Music Man could take on Giant Dreadbear. I have been Candy Bunny, and I have candy all day. Candy, candy, candy.